Yesterday morning, outside the White House, a reporter asked President Trump whether America had just received Iran's best offer to end the most economically disruptive war in a generation. He said 7 words, "I'm not satisfied with it, we'll see." Not a counteroffer, not a negotiating position, not even a rejection with conditions, 7 words. While gas prices across America hit a new high of $4.18 a gallon, while Brent crude climbed above $111 a barrel, while according to Claypoler, the commodity intelligence firm tracking every barrel coming in and out of Iran, Tehran now has between 12 and 22 days of usable oil storage left before the taps have to shut. Iran handed Trump its most significant proposal yet. Trump threw it back, and today, Saturday, May 2, 2026, the question that every energy market, every military planner, and every government in Asia and Europe is asking in real time is the same one nobody can yet answer. What comes next? Welcome to Dr. Elena.Murphy. If you're new here, this channel is your deep dive source for the military, geopolitical, and economic stories that are reshaping the world. And what you're about to hear is the most important breakdown of this war published this weekend. Iran's real 14-point offer and what it actually concedes. The War Powers Act deadline that Trump quietly declared dead yesterday. The CENTCOM strike plan sitting on Trump's desk. And why the ceasefire that everyone called fragile is now one miscalculation away from becoming irrelevant. Make sure you are subscribed right now. Tap that button before we go any further because this story is moving every single hour and you cannot afford to miss what comes next. Let's start with the proposal itself because the headlines have undersold what Iran actually put on the table. Iran's 14-point proposal was delivered to us mediators in Pakistan on Thursday night, according to Iran's state-run IRNA news agency. The Wall Street Journal was first to report the significant detail that most coverage has missed entirely. Iran's new proposal drops its core precondition, the demand that the U.S. lift its naval blockade before any talks about lifting the Iranian blockade could even begin. For weeks, the stalemate looked like this. Iran said lift the blockade first, then we'll talk. The U.S. said open Hormuz first, then we'll talk. Each side was waiting for the other to blink. Nothing moved. Now, according to the journal's sources, Iran's new proposal replaces that deadlock with something different. Iran is now offering to hold Hormuz talks simultaneously with the U.S. beginning to unwind its blockade and is guaranteeing no further attacks as the process begins. That is not the same as Iran's previous position. That is a real structural shift. And on the nuclear file, the issue that Secretary of State Marco Rubio has repeatedly called the reason we are in this in the first place. The new proposal offers to put Iran's nuclear program on the table in exchange for US sanctions relief. So the question is simple. Why isn't that enough? Here is where it gets complicated, and here is where the real architecture of this stalemate becomes visible. The U.S. position, stated clearly by Rubio to Fox News, is that any deal must definitively prevent Iran from sprinting toward a nuclear weapon at any point in the future. Not limit enrichment, not cap it. Prevent it. Trump has said the word himself more than once. The word is zero enrichment. A complete dismantlement of the nuclear infrastructure, not a managed reduction of it. Iran's new proposal, even in its most generous interpretation, does not offer zero enrichment. It offers to discuss the nuclear program. It offers to negotiate the nuclear file. It does not offer to surrender it. And that gap between discussing and surrendering is the distance between a deal and a second wave of strikes. According to Axios, citing 3 sources with knowledge, U.S. Central Command has already prepared a plan for what officials are calling a short and powerful wave of strikes specifically designed to break the negotiating deadlock. Trump confirmed at the White House on May 1st that he had been briefed on how to, in his words, blast the hell out of them if no deal is reached. That is not a threat being floated anonymously. That is the President of the United States confirming on camera outside the White House that a military escalation option is currently on his desk. Trump told Axios he sees the blockade as somewhat more effective than the bombing, and that he would consider military action if Iran still won't cave. Axios. If you're finding this breakdown valuable, make sure you are subscribed to Dr. Elena.Murphy and have your notifications turned on. We cover this story every single day with the depth it deserves. Hit subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Now let me take you inside the War Powers Act crisis, because this is the story running in parallel to the negotiations, and it may matter more than anything happening in Islamabad or Tehran right now. May 1st, 2026 was not just the day Trump rejected Iran's proposal. It was the day the 60-day clock under the 1973 War Powers Resolution expired. Here is what that means. Under that law, passed by Congress after Vietnam, A president who launches military action without a congressional declaration of war has 60 days to either get Congress to authorize that war or withdraw its forces from the conflict. The Trump administration notified Congress of the beginning of hostilities. On March 2nd, that set the clock. May 1st was the deadline. Trump did not go to Congress. He did not seek authorization. What he did instead was deliver letters on Friday to House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate President pro tempore Chuck Grassley containing one sentence that Democrats immediately called legally indefensible. The hostilities that began on February 28, 2026 have terminated, Trump wrote, pointing to the ceasefire that has been in effect since April 7th. MS now not paused, not frozen, terminated. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth had made a version of this argument the day before at a Senate hearing, saying we are in a ceasefire right now, which our understanding means the 60-day clock pauses or stops, PBS. The problem is this. The U.S. Navy is still blockading every Iranian port. Iranian tankers are still being intercepted in the Gulf of Oman. CENTCOM confirmed it has redirected at least 38 vessels since the blockade began. The USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower are still on station, more than 100 fighter and surveillance aircraft are still enforcing the blockade daily. The ceasefire stopped the airstrikes, it did not stop the war. Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia told the Senate Armed Services Committee directly, "We're still using the U.S. military to blockade all Iranian ports, which is an act of war. Our troops are on orders to be in combat." Republican Senator Susan Collins of Maine, who broke with her party to vote with Democrats on Thursday's War Powers resolution, said the deadline is not a suggestion. It is a requirement and that further military action against Iran must have a clear mission, achievable goals, and a defined strategy for bringing the conflict to a close, the Detroit News. The Senate voted 47-50 to reject that War Powers resolution on Thursday, keeping Trump's authority intact for now. But the crack is visible. Collins voted yes. Republican Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina said publicly that by the time Congress returns from its week-long recess, we need to start talking with the administration to get an authorization for the use of military force, democracy now. That is not a Democratic senator. That is a Republican senator in public, saying the legal architecture of this war needs repairing. And Congress is now on recess for a full week, which means the accountability question goes unresolved at precisely the moment when the CENTCOM strike plan is sitting on Trump's desk awaiting a decision. Now let me tell you what happened inside Iran on the same day all of this was unfolding in Washington. Because the picture inside the regime right now is as important as anything happening in the negotiations. An explosion of leftover bombs from strikes during the war killed 14 Revolutionary Guard members near the northern city of Zanjan on May 1st, the largest number of ERG members reported killed since the ceasefire began on April 7th. The ammunition included cluster bombs and air mines dropped during the initial US-Israeli strikes. Iran's own infrastructure is killing its own soldiers during a ceasefire, PBS. Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, who took power after the assassination of his father Ali Khamenei on February 28, gave a rare public statement this week. He vowed not to give up the country's nuclear or missile technologies and signaled Tehran would keep control of the Strait of Hormuz. That statement came on the same day his foreign ministry was delivering a 14-point peace proposal via Pakistan. The supreme leader publicly contradicting the diplomatic track his own government is running is not a unified regime making coherent decisions. It is a fractured system sending different signals to different audiences simultaneously, claims. Journal. Trump noticed. When he rejected the proposal Friday, he specifically cited what he called Iran's fractured leadership as a complicating factor. He told reporters, "They've made strides, but I'm not sure if they ever get there. They're asking for things that I can't agree to. The Times of Israel, and then there is the economic reality that no diplomatic language can paper over." Claypoller, the commodity intelligence firm whose data is cited across both Wall Street and government assessments, puts Iran's daily loss from the blockade at between $200 million and $250 million per day, lower than Trump's claimed $500 million figure, but devastating in the context of an economy that was already contracting before the first strike landed. Traffic through the Strait of Hormuz in the last 2 months has run at approximately 5% of the pre-war average, according to CNN's analysis of Lloyd's List intelligence data, CEBCN. National gas price averages in the United States hit a new record high of $4.18 on Tuesday, up from $4.11 a day earlier. The international benchmark price for oil, Brent crude, reached above $111 a barrel as the proposal was rejected. NBC News. The economic pain is real on both sides, and both sides know it. What we can say with certainty today, every word verified, every source named, is that the Iran war passed its 60-day legal threshold yesterday with no congressional authorization, no deal, no open strait, and a commander-in-chief who told the world he is not satisfied. The CENTCOM strike plan is real. The war powers clock dispute is real. The 14-point proposal is real. Iran's fractured leadership is real. And somewhere on a ship in the Gulf of Oman, CENTCOM forces are still redirecting tankers away from Iranian ports, while a president in Washington writes letters to Congress saying the war is over, even as his defense secretary prepares the next phase of it. That is not a war that has terminated. That is a war that is deciding what it wants to be next. Subscribe to Dr. Elena Murphy right now. Every development in this story, the CENTCOM strike decision, Iran's next move through Pakistan, and whether the war powers' constitutional fight forces Congress into the room before this ceasefire collapses, we will cover it with the depth and the sourcing it demands. Hit the notification bell so you are there the moment we publish. Tell me in the comments, do you think Iran's 14-point proposal was genuinely the closest this war has come to a deal? Or is Trump holding out for a total nuclear surrender that Tehran will never deliver?